Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Saturday. I'm Leslie Frank, and I'd like to welcome you to our first virtual event of 2021, our wine and Kohler chocolate pairing. We are super excited today to be partnering with chocolatier and chef Chris Kohler, who's been working with us to perfectly pair his amazing European-style chocolate with a few of our award-winning Frank family wines. In 2020, Chris earned the champion title on the Food Network's Chopped, and he's been named Dessert Professional Magazine's Top 10 Chocolatiers of North America. In the next hour, Chris will show us how he creates his handcrafted edible works of art. And if you've been to his shop in Yountville, you may have witnessed his artistry firsthand. We are also so excited to have Chris here with us today, and we're equally excited to have our Director of Hospitality and I like to call him the voice of Frank Family Vineyards, Liam Garrity, here with us to walk through the wines and give us a better understanding of which wines and chocolates pair best. Now, continuing with our Frank Family virtual tasting tradition, we are keeping this hour interactive. We want to hear from you, so send your questions and comments in the chat section and the Q&A section, and be sure to listen closely because we've got a few trivia questions, and as usual, the winners of those trivia questions will receive a $100 gift certificate to use on the Frank Family website at frankfamilyvineyards.com to purchase any wine or merchandise. And something a little extra special today, Chris Kohler is also giving that winner, the lucky winners, I should say, a 16-piece box of his amazing chocolate. So you're going to want to listen closely. Should we get the party started, as they say? Liam, you want to take it away?
Sure, Leslie. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Great to see you, and thanks for joining us today. Wine and chocolate can be debated about their passion and their deliciousness. I know so many people have incredible fondness for both of those things, but how we bring them together and how we can create a complementary experience between two of our favorite things, wine and chocolate, can be something of a challenge. What we've done today, and I think what's going to be really exciting today, is chosen 6 pieces of chocolate to go with 2 of our flagship reserve tier wines. Today we're going to be tasting the 2015 vintage Brut Rosé, one of Todd's sparkling wines, as well as the 2017 Charles Valley Reserve Zinfandel. And to go with these 2 wines, we've selected 6 of Kohler Chocolate's delicious morsels that we think are going to help us gain a little bit of insight into that relationship between the richness and savory flavors sometimes found in chocolate and the flavors and structure of our favorite wines. There is a saying that too much of a good thing is in fact too much. So finding the balance between the chocolate and the wine is what today's experience is going to be all about. Now, of course, when we taste wine and chocolate, ultimately, all tastes can be subjective. So I encourage you at home to have fun with these pairings. We're going to tell you what we think is working well, and I want to hear from you as well what's working well for you and why. Because it's not just about what works together in a great food and wine pairing. It's understanding what's happening between those 2 components that makes it work so well. I'm really excited to be sharing this time with Chris today. If you've been to Napa Valley and been to his shop, you know how incredible his product is. We've had the opportunity at Frank Family Vineyards to work with Chris on a couple of occasions for some specialty chocolates for our member events. And I'm really excited for those of you who aren't familiar with his wonderful brand of chocolates to experience that today. Chris, how are you?
I'm great, Liam.
Great to see you. Thank you
too.
for joining us today.
Yes, no, Leslie, thank you for having me, and Liam, it's happy to be here, and we've put together a fun experience for our guests this afternoon, and we're going to share some secrets about chocolate and some fun pairings that we think is good, and you're going to have it in your own home. So happy to be here on this beautiful Napa sunny afternoon.
I know, it is a beautiful day today. It really is. Chris, I'm sure there's a lot of people at home who are watching this and thinking, gosh, why didn't I choose a chocolatier as my profession? How did you find yourself in this position?
Wow, it's been quite a journey. I'm originally from the Atlanta, Georgia area. Straight out of high school, I went to culinary school. Found out it wasn't for me, so I started traveling the country and working for chefs that I read about in magazines in the early 90s. And ventured my way across the country. Went to Colorado, went to the Cayman Islands, went to Seattle, and then ended up in the Napa Valley in 2002. Worked at a slur of restaurants up and down the valley, Domaine Chandon, Go Fish, Trevigny, and met all these wonderful, great chefs and people in our community, and just being a part of the Napa Valley. Let's see, about 2010, well, between 2005 and 2010, I was a winery chef at Peter Michael Winery over in Sonoma, and Sir Peter told me one day, do whatever you want in the kitchen when we're not here, and I thought that was a good time to start focusing on chocolate. There's really, I like to say, 3 disciplines in the culinary world. You're going to be a baker, you're going to be a chocolatier, you're going to be a savory chef. And at the time, I wanted to be a well-rounded chef, and I didn't have any chocolate experience at all. And all 3 of those disciplines take a lot of time to focus on. So that was my time to take my own money, do my own thing, and start focusing on chocolate. Started dropping chocolates at the end of our nice dinners, and there was a big callback of how do I get more, and I said to myself, I think there's a business here. There's a handful of chocolate companies in the Napa Valley, and we all express what we think chocolate should be like in our different forms, and this was a nice form for Kohler Chocolates to come into Yountville and start up. So in 2011, I got my doors open, and we're going to be 10 years old this summer, and I haven't looked back since.
That's great. I didn't realize that you had been in that shop for 10 years. That's fabulous.
I can't believe it either.
When it comes to the idea that wine and chocolate pair or don't pair, we need to be very aware of 2 things, and that's how I want to start our experience today. The 2 wines we're going to focus on, again, for the majority of our tasting are going to be the Brut Rosé and the Charles Valley Zinfandel. We also have, for some folks who chose to participate in this way, some Cabernet Sauvignon, our famous 17 vintage RHF Cabernet Sauvignon, and then the port wine as well, paired with 3 pieces for each of those wines. Balance is the key. And when thinking about the way food and wine balance, I like to talk about the relationship between the 2 on 2 separate levels. And on the first level, what we're talking about is the flavor of the chocolate and the flavor of the wine, that flavor mesh, and how these 2 flavors can actually come together to increase or amplify the expression in each of them. And that wonderful meshing that happens between the flavor of the food, in this case the chocolate, and the flavors found in the wine. But situated underneath that flavor mesh, there's another relationship that we want to be looking at. And this is what I like to call the structure mesh. And when we look at that structure mesh, we're not thinking necessarily about the flavors found in either the food or wine, as much as we're thinking about the physical essence and nature of each particle, of each component, the freshness of acidity found in that glass of wine. How does it play against the rich creaminess of the chocolate? Or the tannins in a red wine? What does that do to the density of a ganache? So as we explore and experience these 2 components, be very aware not just of what you're tasting in both, but also what you're feeling and how you're feeling them, and how the process of bringing 2 together makes both better in that marriage. Chris, tell us a little bit about the chocolates. How do you, first of all, just as an easy intro, how is chocolate made?
Well, chocolate's made, it weaves the world. It travels the world before it gets to me. At the end of the day, I'm a chocolatier, and before I get a hold of the chocolate makers make it. So if you look at the equator, and you go 10 degrees north and 10 degrees south of the equator, we call that the chocolate belt. So we're looking through parts of the Caribbean, Ecuador, Venezuela, Africa, and those are the regions that grow chocolate. They need a lot of rain, a lot of heat, a lot of humidity, a lot of wind. We can't grow it here in California. We don't have a lot of that, especially the humidity and the heat. In the southern part, but it needs a lot of rain. So it's not specifically grown in one region of the world, but you just follow that equator, 10 degrees north-south, you're going to find chocolate where it's grown. And the neat thing about chocolate is most of the ingredients that take to process the chocolate are grown in that region as well. This is actually a cacao pod, and this is where it all begins. The cacao trees are maybe 20, 30 feet high, and they live under a canopy that gets about 70% light. And so they can't get scorched. It's a hermaphrodite plant. It pollinates itself, it grows itself, and it produces about twice a year. There's technically 3 varieties of chocolate trees. And this is the biggest one, the Criollo. The other ones are hybrids of this. After years and years and years, they've started cross-pollinating and different varieties have come up. They're very small in their variety sizes. So we go all the way back thousands of years, the Aztecs. This is where chocolate was discovered. So when we source our chocolate, I use a company called Valrhona, and they do all the sourcing. So they'll go to Ecuador and grow a certain type of plantation and produce that exact same chocolate. It's like a winemaker wanting to make that Cabernet Sauvignon every year the same way, or tweak it here and there, but we like to have that base chocolate taste the same every time. A lot of people don't know, but it is a fermented product. So we're going to talk about the pushes and pulls of fermentation from the wine to the chocolate and what that looks like. It's about a 5 to 7 day fermentation. It's a fast process. Basically, they're going to cut this cocoa pod open. On the inside, if you can hear this, those are the cacao beans. They look like this. There's another layer of skin on there. And then that goes into fermentation immediately. 5 to 7 days, and then it gets dried out and shipped all over to the world to chocolate makers. A chocolate maker is someone like Hershey, Valrhona, Scharfenberger, Felschlin, Egatard here in the Bay Area. And so they're going to make all those different percentages. When you go to that chocolate bar, let's say Wall at the grocery store, and you see all those different percentages, 60, 70, 80. I need the darkest. What's the darkest? You know that 90%. That's the chocolate maker's percentages. That's how we get our chocolate. We get it in this form right here.
Right.
These are little coins. They're in this form to help us melt it easy. So
then your process really becomes how you take that and elevate it to the
Exactly.
artistry that you bring.
Yes, and so let's say we're going to talk about this fennel pollen chocolate today. We're going to go do a step-by-step. Let's say we wanted to test out a new flavor. We're going to test from white chocolate to dark chocolate to different percentages and figure out how that infusion, how that flavor shows the best. At the end of the day, we want to have a 50-50 balance of a flavor in our truffles that represent the chocolate makers, what they've done, and then what we've done to the product for our final product.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that was a short of it too. It gets extensive, of
I'm
course,
sure.
but that's going back to how it weaves the world. It always starts in another place, way out of our region before it gets to us.
Got it.
And
Got
so at the end of the day, after they dry those beans, our chocolate's made in the south of France, and then it's shipped over to us in the Provence region, to Hermitage down there on the Rhone River. So the name Valrhona stands for Valley of the Rhone, so Valrhona.
Very
So
cool.
That's always a fun little fact, yeah.
So, Chris, Liam, it's interesting to me because when I think of wine and chocolate going together, I think of maybe red wine or a port and dark chocolate. But we're starting today with the Brut Rosé. Liam, tell us, how does Brut Rosé and chocolate work together?
I thought this was going to be a really cool experience, and I'm glad we're kicking it off with Brut Rosé because it is fun to break away from these kind of preconceptions about what works with what. Our 2015 Brut Rosé, if you haven't opened a glass already, I encourage you to do so because it's delicious. This is one of Todd's sparkling wines made in the Champagne method, and as Champagne method wines go, this implies the meaning behind that term, of course, that the wine was actually physically fermented in the bottle. That portion of bottle fermentation, that secondary fermentation that happens in the bottle, creates a little alcohol in the wine, creates a little bit of carbon dioxide, and then creates that wonderful effervescence. This wine is 90% Pinot Noir, 10% Chardonnay, but I want you to put that blend, that mix aside, and I want you to also do your best to put that color aside and concentrate on the aromas in this wine. Citrus, lemon peel, orange sherbet, and just a hint of fresh toasted bread. The autolysis or autolytic process that happens in sparkling wines is essentially that the yeast that drives that component of fermentation in the bottle breaks down a little bit during the aging of the wine and layers on a touch of wonderful toasty, nutty flavor to complement the ripe, bright fruit. Sparkling wines, also because they're fermented in the bottle, they're not oxidized through normal barrel aging, which means that the wine carries a little bit of acidity. And it's actually sometimes a little bit more than a little bit, sometimes a lot of acidity, and it's that freshness and brightness that's found in the wine that not only catapults those wonderful, vibrant fruit notes to the front of the palate, but also makes this a really interesting partner for foods that have weight and richness and density. And those are all things that we love about a great piece of chocolate. Today we're going to be pairing this Brut Rosé with 3 pieces of chocolate. We're going to be pairing it with a Grand Marnier orange chocolate, with the raspberry milk chocolate ganache, and then with a pistachio amaretto chocolate. And I've chosen these 3 because each one of these chocolates has a particular flavor in it that I think you're going to find complementary to one aspect of the sparkling wine. And we'll talk about that as we go through. I'd like to start first with that orange dome chocolate, the orange Grand Marnier. Chris, tell us a little bit about how that was made.
Well, it's a very classic chocolate. Our orange Grand Marnier is made with a 70% dark chocolate. And what we do is we do cold infusion. So it just doesn't have Grand Marnier in it. We also steep orange peels. So when we do our process, we'll steep in cold cream like this for up to 48 hours to really get those oils and that nice zesty flavor of what orange peel only really does bring. And so we'll take our chocolate, chopped up like this. We'll have our infusion. We'll bring it to a certain temperature. We'll strain it, and then we'll hand blend and emulsify it at another certain temperature, around the 100-degree mark, and to bring all those nice flavors together. And so what I like about the Brut Rosé and that Grand Marnier is that acidity that you were touching upon is, you're going to taste a little bit of that orange on the back end of there, and as a zest does, it really carries through your palate, and it's something I really liked, and I think we picked a really good one with this.
That's great. A nice softball right across the plate to kick us off. Yeah, I love the way that on the flavor mesh, that top layer of good food and wine pairing, the orange sherbet or citrus or citrus peel notes that this wine carries with it really accentuate that orange note in the chocolate. Of course, the chocolate tastes like chocolate, rich and creamy and round across the palate and very much enveloping all of our taste buds. But it's that subtle vein that Chris brings to the chocolate with that wonderful orange infusion that almost amplifies or accentuates that subtle citrus note coming through in the wine. Now, that's what we like to call, again, that top tier level of pairing good food and wine, how those flavors complement. But as equally important as that top tier, we look at that under tier. And this is where the richness and weight and dimension of the chocolate is going to be contrasted by that freshness of acidity with the weight of the food on your palate. And notice this as you're enjoying this piece of chocolate. Notice how it melts around and occupies real estate and just takes up all those nooks and crannies of your palate. Really feel the chocolate's weight as it settles on your palate. With that weight of food sitting heavy, imagine how that next bite of chocolate would taste, having to work against that residual component of weight left behind by the first bite of enjoyment. Now with that weight of food lingering, go ahead and establish the presence of the Brut Rosé on your palate and feel how that wave of acidity comes through and breaks down and lifts and clears some of those weighty notes from the chocolate away, which in turn leaves room on your palate for new flavors to come in and have impact. The presence of wine's acidity helps cleanse our palate of those weighty dimensions to make room for new flavors to have that explosive impact that we experienced the first time we tasted it.
Liam, I don't know if I'm supposed to be waiting. Can I bite into the chocolate? Can
absolutely.
I do this?
This is go time, guys. If you're at home waiting for the cue, this is it.
Fantastic. I just want to say I'm getting some comments in the chat section from people saying, okay, this is an 11 out of 10. That's what Terry Spearing's saying.
Thank you.
And, you should have sent us more chocolate, said Tim and Bonnie Rooney. Okay, next time. We live and learn, right? But we're getting people from all over the country who are tuning in for this today. I think this is truly something that that people love to experience together, wine and chocolate. It's a beautiful marriage. And so I just want to give a couple of shout outs to the folks who are joining us from Ashburn, Virginia, from Miami, from Las Vegas, Kansas City, Charlotte, North Carolina, Naples, Florida, Chicago, where it's very cold, Texas, where it's also very cold, and Christy Davis, I'm happy to hear that you have heat and power. That's good to know. Folks from Omaha, Nebraska, and our good friend Chris Saccani, who's joining us from Santa Monica today. So now I'm going to bite into this, and I know I'm going to enjoy it because I've had it before, and it's a wonderful pairing. Liam?
Yeah, I love this pairing. I think this was one of the first ones that when we were experimenting and exploring what Chris was doing and what family was doing, this one really stuck out for me. And I think it's a great way to jump off into this tasting because it captures those spirits that we're going to be looking for in every one of these partnerships. What does the chocolate bring in its incredible artistry flavor that we find amplified by the wine? And then conversely, how does what the wine bring help us amplify the experience of joy that we take in, that almost primal feeling of exhilaration when the richness and flavor of that chocolate comes through? A great marriage really makes both partners better from the union. And this union of wine and chocolate can do the same. Now, will this work with every chocolate? No. And that's why we're doing this today. We're experiencing different styles of wine and different styles of chocolate to find that perfect balance. Have fun today. Taste, try it, save a little bit, save a morsel, or call Chris to get some more, and try different partnerships and say, hey, I see how this one works, and maybe I see how this one doesn't. The next piece on our board is the beautiful, I love this shape. I want to know how you get such perfect hexagons on it. This is the raspberry milk chocolate ganache, also to be paired with the Brut Rosé. Chris, tell us about the raspberry ganache.
Raspberry ganache, it's, well, basically there's two types of ganache. The first one you ate was the Grand Marnier ganache, and that's a cream-based ganache with orange peel steeped in it. This one's a fruit-based ganache. In our little science lab, in our mathematician world of developing these chocolates, we're working with cocoa butter fats, we're working with cocoa mass, and we're working with, of course, flavors that we want together. The raspberry chocolate, I'm going to pull one out here, is a great little chocolate that's pure fruit and milk chocolate as well. The neat thing about the milk chocolate that we use for this, and I think that's what makes it a harmonious little bite here, is the background flavors when they develop this milk chocolate are chestnut and a little bit of honey, and of course that chocolatey milk chocolate flavor, which is a little more mellow than a dark chocolate. There's going to be more creaminess to it. There's milk solids floating around. All of our chocolates incorporate vanilla beans in them. Madagascar vanilla beans. Where chocolate grows, other like-minded products grow as well, and we like to use them here. But when we get the chocolate to us, that's when we really can dive in and use the ingredients in our region. So fresh raspberries, when raspberries are at the time of year, and this is just a wonderful milk chocolate raspberry. All the chocolates you're going to eat today are coated in a dark chocolate that's 62%. It's a mild dark chocolate. It's not to disturb the flavor. It's going to add some flavor profiles to it. But each one of these chocolates, the star of the show, the supporting actors are the outside, but the star of the show is the ganache, the center, the middle. And that's what we're going to focus on today. And this is one of my favorites. It's just screams raspberry, and I love it with the wine as well.
That's great. I love that analogy, the star of the show. Sometimes we talk about that when I talk about wine. I say, who's the lead actor in this wine, and who's the supporting character? In Napa Valley's wines, the lead actor is going to be the fruit. The fruit note shines in Napa because of this beautiful climate, this wonderful heat, these sunlit days that grow this fruit. This brings those fruit notes to the forefront. But like any great a film or television show, the supporting cast matters as well. The main star of the Brut Rosé are those wonderful citrus and orange peel notes, but that hint of Pinot Noir skin that's utilized in the winemaking process to give the wine the hint of color, that beautiful salmon hue, also delivers subtle veins of red fruit, and it may come across as cherry or strawberry or raspberry. And in this pairing, I want that flavor mesh to bring out those red fruit tones in this sparkling wine, to show that other character and that other side of the fruit in the wine. Let's go ahead and try this raspberry ganache. Let that richness envelop the palate. Take time to appreciate and enjoy those flavors, and then bring the Brut Rosé into the mix and see how that changes the way we experience the wine's flavor once that raspberry note from chocolate has already been established on our palate.
I love this one, Todd. I'm going to jump in real quick. Something you need to know is we don't add additives or preservatives to our chocolate, so these are all natural. The shelf life's about 4 to 6 weeks. And it's not just going to go bad or get rotten or sour, but it's almost like opening a bottle of wine on a Monday and you revisit it on later in the week. It's going to fade just a little bit, and then the chocolate will start to fade. I want you to eat them at their best time, and that's about between the first day and the 6 week mark is the max. But you can still keep on eating them.
Great. Well, we did our best to get everyone their chocolate right in time. Leslie, something coming from our audience today?
Well, we're getting all kinds of comments,
Great.
and they're all very positive. So I think the biggest regret that our viewers have had today is not ordering enough of your chocolate, Chris. I'm trying to see the name here. Adalia Lastra, she said the pistachio is so interesting and delicious. She's jumped ahead. She's like, I've had the first two. I'm going right to the pistachio. So she's moved on. The raspberries pop when paired with the rosé. That's from Amy and Steve Clement. And Tony Spearing said, should have ordered 2 boxes of the chocolates. Robert Forte says the raspberry chocolate is delicious with the Brut Rosé. So lots of positive comments here, but I think it's time for a trivia question. And I know that everybody is listening so closely today. So the first question, and what should we do, Marissa? What, number 3, third person? The third person to get the answer correct in the chat section will win a $100 gift certificate to Frank Family Vineyards to be used on our website in the shop section for wine or merchandise, and a 16-piece box of chocolate. So for those of you who didn't order enough, now's your chance. The trivia question is, the process that creates wine also creates chocolate. What is it? One word. And we have a lot of very good listeners out there, very smart viewers. It looks like Stephanie Brodish, fermentation is the answer. Stephanie, Marissa McCann from our marketing department will reach out to you. She's got your info, and she will make sure that you get your gift card and your chocolates. And I'm going to continue eating mine and sipping the Brut Rosé. Liam?
Thanks, Leslie. Congratulations to the winner. I'm excited to hear what you think of those chocolates. And guys, if you're enjoying this and this was something that you wish you had more chocolate, let us know. Maybe we can do it again. I know that we've had a lot of fun preparing this tasting for you, and I really hope you've had fun watching it. The third chocolate in this first trio of pairings is that pistachio amaretto that I hope some of you have already jumped into but saved a little bit. This pairing to me highlights the undercurrent of a good sparkling wine's flavor. Sparkling wines are fermented in the bottle, and then they're rested in the bottle, and that resting period allows for a couple of things. It allows for the yeast to consume all the sugar, convert the sugar to alcohol. It allows for that creation of carbon dioxide in the bottle, and then it allows for the breakdown of that component of yeast with that process called autolysis, which instills in good sparkling wines a very subtle undertone of flavor that's reminiscent of fresh baked bread, and it also carries a hint of almost nuttiness to it. In this pairing, the pistachio amaretto, I think probably my favorite chocolate, a white chocolate base with that dark chocolate shell over, delivers rich, nutty, sweet characters that I think highlight that often overlooked component of champagne or sparkling wine's flavor. The autolytic notes, those toasty, yeasty, bready, nutty undercurrents of flavor. They're tough to find in a youthful sparkling wine. They become a bit more apparent as the wine matures and that transformation of flavor goes on in wine's time. But we'll find this chocolate just touching on that note, and I think it's really cool. Chris, can you tell us about the pistachio and the amaretto combo?
Well, this is also my favorite chocolate. I love them all. They're like my children, well, my child, but I love them all. This is my favorite. It reminds me of an Italian bakery. Let's talk about this chocolate. What's neat about this chocolate, and the two that you've tasted before, is we went from a dark chocolate to a milk chocolate to a white chocolate, and we're pairing it with this one wine, this rosé. That's pretty neat. Now, the filling in this, we talked about the first two fillings. We have a cream-based filling for the Grand Marnier. We have a milk chocolate fruit-based filling for the raspberry. And now this is a praline. The praline is, there's no cream, there's no moisture in this chocolate. And so basically, if you take any kind of nut, almonds, cashews, walnuts, pistachios, you grind them down, you roast them, you grind them down, and you caramelize them just slightly. That's a praline. It's all these different devices that pulverize it and smash it and make it smooth into like into a peanut butter type of form. And then we add some cocoa butter or whatever type of chocolate. But this pistachio amaretto is pistachio and amaretto. There's a slight little crisp inside. It's Rice Krispies. And so we grind those down and give it a little texture. Still on the outside, that 62% dark chocolate. And on the inside, it's more of a denser center. One of my favorites, if you ever come across the almond pralines or hazelnut pralines, those are very, very classic Northern Italy type of chocolates. But you'll taste this one lingering, the amaretto will linger. You'll get that nice roasty nut of the pistachio and the back end of the amaretto. And then, you know, with a splash of this Brut Rosé, it's a home run in my book. And I think this was one of the best choices we made.
Great, Chris. Thank you.
Liam, I have a question from Deb Wills. It's for Chris. Chris, what is the best way to store chocolate?
That's a great question. We get that one often. Store it where you would store your red wine. So we don't want to see it go much further than below 55 degrees. A dry, cool cabinet that doesn't get direct light, no sunlight, a little light from the room's okay, but in a cabinet, that's a perfect place. Around 70 degrees is perfect. We don't like to see them go too much further down in temperature. What happens is you got to remember there's moisture on the inside of there. So if you just pop them in the fridge and pull them out, there's going to be some condensation on the outside. It's kind of going to ruin the flavor. It's going to beat the flavor up a little bit. So eat them at room temperature is the best when they show. Think of it like cheese. It's like eat cheese at room temperature. It shows the best. But in a nice a shut cabinet is the perfect place to store your chocolates.
It's funny because we're getting some comments on here. One person said, you store chocolate in your mouth.
That person's right.
That was Renee Hunt who said that. That's funny. Yeah. And then Tony Spearing says, who stores chocolate? Doesn't last in our house just like not finishing a bottle of Frank Family Wine. That doesn't happen.
That's right, yeah. People say the same to me, Leslie. How long can I keep this wine after it's been opened? I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
I don't understand.
Well, I'll touch on that just for a second. Sometimes you might see a chocolate bar, a piece of chocolate, and it has like a white fog going across it, or it might have little white spots. You may put it in your cabinet too long, or your glove box, or you just discovered it, you stashed it away. If you ever see that little white fog going across your chocolate, that's telling you that cocoa butter is trying to push through. Now, if you see the little white dots, that's the sugar trying to push through. Chocolate's made up of basically three products: cocoa nibs, cocoa butter, and sugar. And so if you ever heard that term tempered chocolate doesn't mean it has a bad attitude or it's got a problem with anyone, but we have to melt down cocoa butter, cocoa mass, and sugar to 120 degrees so everything comes together. We bring it down to 80 degrees, then we stabilize it just below 90, and that's its working temperature. So if we miss any of those degree points in the temper, you're going to start seeing that fog, the little white dots, the little white fog going across your chocolate. Cocoa butter is the fog, the little white dots is the sugar. That chocolate's out of temper just a little bit. So keep that in mind if you store your chocolate in your glove box or somewhere you forget about.
Chris, I have a question. I mean, looking at these chocolates, they're truly, each individually, a work of art. Can you shed some light on what you do to create these little edible pieces of art? Because, you know, I'm just looking at this one here, and Liam touched on it before, you know, with the hexagon, grenache, I think it was. That just, look at this. What is this on top? It's so beautiful. Like, I look at it, I look at it, I say, maybe I shouldn't eat it. I always do, but I think maybe I shouldn't because it's too pretty to eat.
So,
how do you do that?
This is, I'm going to just jump into our chocolate right here. That's a great question. We start off, the defined shaped chocolates you have in your box are coming out of these polycarbonate molds. So these are very hard. It's a hard plastic, let's say, extremely hard. It's a 2-day process for us. We don't rush anything. We practice the old style of chocolate making. And our very first step is we hand polish each one of these little cavities with a cotton pad. So we hear that nice little squeak. And so that's going to help with the shine and the release of the chocolate. And so my team, we all have strong fingers. I think we should have a rock climbing team. Everyone's fingers are really strong polishing these. And that's our very first step. The second step, and you notice there's colors on these chocolates. And so the colors you're seeing is food grade colored cocoa butter. So the cocoa butter that comes from the cacao, we put the food grade colored cocoa butter in there, and then we actually airbrush it. So imagine this has colored cocoa butter in there. We're gonna bring it up to those tempered stages, that 120, 80, stabilize it below 90. Now it's in its ready use. We're gonna hook it up to the airbrush compressor and we're gonna spray these. It's a very, very light film. A little goes a long ways on this. So, and this one actually has two colors. Now, if you can get a close up over here real quick, if you look at what fennel pollen looks like, it has a sort of greenish, goldish hue to it. And so on most all of our chocolates, we try to mimic how that product started at the beginning of its life. The orange Grand Marnier, it's the orange and yellowish. The raspberry has the raspberry color look. The pistachio is just a wild one, and it does reflect Italian sports, and most of the sports, especially soccer, they like to wear their blue. And there's the green spots for pistachio. So we airbrush it, we let this sit up. We're back to the pistachio. We let it set up maybe a few hours or overnight, and then our next step is called shelling. So if you can see in this photo right here, we now have chocolate in there. So we're gonna take melted chocolate, just like this. This is close to tempered chocolate. And we have one piece of machinery at the shop, and it's called our tempering machine. So the tempered chocolate is chocolate, if you can hear this right here, see if you can hear this. You hear that little snap right there, that's telling me it's tempered. That's telling me 120, 80, stabilized below 90, cocoa butter, cocoa mass, and sugar are all cohesive at this point. Now we're gonna pour that tempered chocolate into these, the cavities that we've airbrushed. It's all set up. Now if you can look at this right here, I pulled one of them out, very shiny. That defined shape of that hexagon. And the backstory of this hexagon is, kind of looks like a honeycomb. Fennel pollen, we try to get it before the bees get it, and it's part of the process. So there we go. The next and final step is we're gonna take our cream, and we're gonna use our imagination right now and some TV magic, that the fennel pollen has been in this cream. It's steeped for quite a while, maybe up to 48 hours. We're gonna bring it up to a boil, and then we're gonna pour it over our milk chocolate. The milk chocolate has hints of honey, chestnut. It's gonna be a great combination for the milk chocolate and the cream. Gonna fill your mouth. We make an emulsification with a hand blender, nice and smooth. Everything's come together now, and then we get in this little piping bag, and we pipe each one of these, hand pipe, there's no machines that do it, just about 2.5 millimeters below the top. We're gonna let that set up overnight. It needs to relax. It's gonna start shrinking a little bit when the cream and the ganache get cool, and we don't wanna damage the final process of the chocolate. It could cave in just a little bit. So after we pipe all these, we come revisit it the next day. We're gonna take tempered chocolate one more time, this runny chocolate, back to the 120, 80, stabilized below 90, and we're gonna put a small layer of chocolate across the top of this, and we're gonna scrape it. We're gonna scrape it till it's nice and smooth. If you haven't eaten your fennel pollen chocolate or any of your chocolates, if you look at the bottom of your chocolate, that's the final and last step of the chocolate making. We're gonna let that set up for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then we're gonna take these molds. I'm not gonna take this one because they'll all fall out. It's kind of abrupt, but we're gonna take this mold and we're gonna smack it upside down, and all the chocolates are gonna fall out on the marble, and then we're happy. Now, it's gonna let us know immediately if we've missed a step. If we're out of temper slightly, the chocolates are gonna stick in there. If we didn't temper that cocoa butter properly, it's gonna leave a mark and a blemish. So our objective is to keep patience, to keep us well tempered the whole day. We eat a lot of chocolate at the shop, but our final product, we want to look like just like this every single time. This is our signature chocolate. It's very special to us. Special to me is I'm a cyclist, and fennel grows wild all over the side of the highways in California and in the forest, and you see it everywhere. One day I was riding my bike, I was pulling it off, and I just put it in my mouth, because when you climb on bikes in the Napa Valley hills, it can be quite painful sometimes, but you're having fun. And I was like, you know what, this might be good in a chocolate. In my savory background, and at a lot of the Italian restaurants I work in, we use fennel pollen a lot. And that's one of the fun crosses from my savory background to chocolate background. We don't want to have over-sweetened chocolates. We want to have well-balanced chocolates. And the nice floral anise flavor of this chocolate's really special. Yes?
Sorry, we're going to get to the Zinfandel in a moment, because I know that some of our anxious viewers, if they haven't moved on from the Brut Rosé, maybe they have already, but I know I'm anxious to get to the Zinfandel too, because I know the Zin pairs so well with chocolate. But I did want to know, one person here is asking, this is kind of funny, she said, Chris, besides all the fabulous Frank family wines, what else do you like to pair chocolate with? I see you have a few bourbons. She's laughing about all the bourbons that are behind you, and is that the preferred liquor to drink with chocolate? Okay, well, full disclosure, we're here on Winston Hill, Frank Family's Winston Hill, where Rich and I live, and this is our party barn, I guess, and where we tend to host a number of virtual tastings, and all of those wonderful liquors behind you are courtesy of my husband, but you know what, Chris, we're happy to share. So I guess the question is, what else do you like to pair chocolate with?
Well, one of my favorites is whiskeys and bourbons. It really is truly a fun pairing. They're in their oak barrels, and there's vanilla hints. There's similar hints to the base chocolates that we use. We've paired them with vodkas before, brandies. We do around fall time of year. We'll do a pear brandy, and it's just lovely. Armagnacs, cognacs. They're just wonderful. These are really deep classic French chocolate bases. They were making these hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But I like those, and you know, I always discover something new. So if I come across something and it's a good pairing, we just go with it. But we want to enjoy everything. That's the main point.
Well, we definitely know that your chocolate pairs beautifully with our Zinfandel, and Liam's going to tell us about that.
Yeah, if the Brut Rosé and chocolate pairing was the appetizer, I think the Zin will be the main course. This is Frank Family's 2017 vintage Childs Valley Reserve Zinfandel. If you visit us at the winery, if you've enjoyed this wine before, you know Childs Valley is a growing region in the Vaca mountain range, one of the two mountain ranges that define the valley that is Napa. It's on the higher elevation side, and that's important for Zinfandel because this is a grape that requires a lot of heat to ripen. So exposure to intense heat during the summer growing months happens a little bit more at higher elevations. So we love this mountain Zinfandel wine. Ripe fruit from the nose, I mean, it's absolutely so generous in its plum and raspberry and cherry expressions. The fruit is really explosive in a great Zinfandel. But this is also a wine that was aged in French oak barrels for 16 months. And during that time in the wood, you're having that slight reduction of acidity in the fruit from the oxidation, but also then that layering of oak notes that we didn't find so much in the sparkling wine because it wasn't oak aged. A good red wine aged in wood develops subtle secondary expressions of cinnamon and nutmeg or vanilla bean. And these wonderful secondary layers of expression create that depth and richness that makes a truly great Zinfandel. Time in wood, very, very important for understanding how this wine behaves. This is also a wine that has tannins, and this is where we start to see this energy of red wine creating potentially some friction with the density and richness and flavor profile, really, of the denser dark cocos. But we're gonna find a way today with Zinfandel, which is a little bit more relaxed in its tannic structure and offset by a little bit more freshness of acidity because of that Napa Valley AVA from which it comes. The Zinfandel will pair today with the 72% dark chocolate with just a hint of sea salt. It'll pair with a red wine dark chocolate ganache that Chris used this very wine with to make, and he'll tell us a little bit more about that. And it'll pair with that chocolate that he just demonstrated for us, an award-winning chocolate for Chris, called the fennel pollen. Licorice is a note that we often find in red wine, and it's a fun flavor, remembering again that this isn't a primary note as much as it is a complementary note to whatever that primary note would be. In this case, it's the fruit, how it's complemented by the cinnamon and punches of vanilla from the thyme in the wood. Let's go ahead and, I think we should kick it off, Chris, today with this beautiful kind of striped red-topped chocolate. This is the red wine dark chocolate ganache that was made with Frank Family's Charles Valley Zinfandel.
Yes, great flavor profiles on these. We did make it with the red wine from Frank Family, the Zinfandel. Liam touched upon cinnamon and vanilla bean, and those are the base flavors on the back end of chocolate. Very slight hints of it, but we fortify it with our Madagascar vanilla as well. What's neat about this chocolate, especially this red wine one, is we use a 64% dark chocolate. It's called a Manjari. It's a Valrhona variety. It was grown in old mangrove area, and what's neat, just like wine, terroir is very important. Where chocolate's grown is going to show a difference. We can grow a 64 or 70% in Africa and one in Venezuela, call it 70%. They're going to taste slightly different from where it's grown. So the tasting notes on the 64% chocolate that we have in this are red fruit skins. So it's the deep chocolate. It almost tastes darker than a 70% because of the tannins. The red fruit skin really lingers and carries. That's one of the neat things about the base chocolate we use. It's like a nice wine that has great balance from beginning to end. We want it to taste through and have a nice long linger. I think the Zinfandel in this. Now, what do we do? How do we make something with Zinfandel? Let's go back to that before I jump into it. We're going to take our base cream, we're going to take our vanilla, and we're going to make a formula where we use X amount of a Zinfandel, and we're going to emulsify that with the 64% dark chocolate. It's one of my favorites. It's one of our top sellers, the red wine, especially being in the region of the Napa Valley. And go ahead and taste it. You're going to taste a nice chocolatey beginning, and then you're going to taste that fruit carrying through the middle and going on to the back end. If you just ate this by itself, 15 minutes later, you're still going to feel this, and it's going to keep on going in your mouth. It's really neat.
That's wonderful. That's such a great expression. Tannins in red wine, of course, come from the skins of the grape, and when a grape grows in a climate, certain climates, cooler climates specifically, can force a grape to develop a slightly thicker skin. Other varietals just naturally have thicker skins. So not every wine is going to come through with the same degree of tannic structure, but the tannins of, I think, of this Zinfandel are fairly relaxed enough that we don't have an experience of astringent on astringent, which can be challenging for the mouth. So this pairing and then the following pairing with the dark chocolate are ones that we really want to be cognizant of, not just the flavor mesh, obviously the fruit notes of the wine complementing the earthy cocoa notes in the chocolate, and then those wonderful aromatics that Chris is able to infuse, but then also be cognizant of the structure bridge, how the wine feels on the palate versus that density and richness of the chocolate. Leslie, you have a question from our audience today.
Well, I think it's time for another trivia question.
Yes,
so before we have too much wine and too much chocolate and forget what we've been talking about. So we'll back up a little bit. If you were listening earlier on, you would have, Chris gave you the answer to this already. So the question is, cacao grows best in the chocolate belt. Where is the chocolate belt? Where is it? Where does it grow best? And we'll take the, fourth correct answer in the chat section. Okay, is that it? Mm-hmm. Adriana Hernandez, you are correct. 10 degrees north and south of the equator. You got it.
Listening.
Congratulations, you win a $100 gift certificate to use on our Frank Family Vineyards website in the shop section for merchandise or wine, and a 16-piece of Kohler chocolate. So congratulations to you. Marissa McCann, our marketing manager, will reach out to you with your winnings. All right, Liam.
I love this rich Zinfandel. The more time I spend getting to know it from its aroma, the more generous it's becoming. It's had a little bit of time in the air to kind of share its personality. Again, those ripe plum, red and black fruit notes underscored by those hints of barrel spice. The tannins in the wine break down. And that's one of the things that tannins do. That's why we consider them natural antioxidants, because they help break things down, both in our body and in our bloodstream. But then also, of course, on our palate. Pairing a tannic red wine against a denser chocolate, for me, makes a lot of sense, because what it'll do is it'll help that chocolate's flavor release itself across the palate, so that we're not just swallowing what could have been more of that wonderful experience. So often in our lives, when we enjoy things like food and wine and chocolate, we rush to the end, right? Oh, that was good, give me more, and that first bite has already come and gone. We've left so much of that piece's flavor out of the experience because of that need to move on. In this hour, I hope that we've at least taken some time to slow down and really experience the weight and richness and those lingering flavors. The tannins, for me, in this chocolate pairing, this was a rich chocolate, like you said, 64 or maybe even more like 70% dark in its density. That's heavy on my palate. It sits a little richer. The presence of tannins from the red wine and the red wine's physical energy of acidity break down some of that richness and actually release more of those wonderful flavors. And try that at home right now, guys, if you haven't already. See what happens to the piece of chocolate when red wine joins him in that wonderful space on the palate.
One of the first things I noticed, Liam, on that chocolate is it brings out the soft spices of that Zinfandel.
Yeah.
It's like the chocolate and then the alcohol and the wine, they hit it and it just brightens up. And having the spice in the back of chocolate is one of my favorite things. We do a spicy chocolate at the shop, but it is really neat to see it pull through after having a sip of this wine. So,
Chris, we've watched the demonstration on the fennel pollen. I'd like to experience it in action. Can we try that next?
yes,
Fennel
let's
pollen.
do it.
Chris, this is, of course, the piece of chocolate that Chris demonstrated in the making process for us. Such a perfect little morsel, and exactly what it is that you do, that idea of combining unique flavors with the tried and true joys of chocolate. If you're at home, let's give this wonderful and beautiful dome a try. Silky smooth. What's the density of chocolate on this one?
So this is actually a 40% milk chocolate, and so we got the milk chocolate. We have the milk solids going on in there. Once again, the background flavors of chestnut, a little bit of honey, and I think it fits perfect with the fennel pollen with its floralness. Now, when we say fennel pollen, once again, I know I touched on this earlier. Not fennel seed, not star anise, not fennel bulb, but just that delicate pollen, what brings that floralness out, and it's just a wonderful marriage in the milk chocolate. Then
Chris, when I took a bite of the chocolate, I really loved its flavors. When I brought wine into the equation, I felt like the flavors of the chocolate were starting to recede, and then in introducing the wine, it breathed new life into those flavors, and then that floral note really kind of exploded, and it really started to resonate.
this is the one at the shop where people come and go, ooh, fennel, no. And you're like, no, hold on, let's taste this, let's talk about this. So yeah, I just had a nice sip of it, and there's such a harmony in the mouth with the Zinfandel after that one little bite. It's lovely.
I will say, Chris, that one of the highlights for me so far this year for 2021 was when Liam and our marketing team, Marissa McCann and Kelsey Harris, I always say your last name, Harris, right? Kelsey, I just call her Kelsey, okay? Kelsey, Marissa, Liam said, Leslie, we've got to taste some chocolate and pair it with our wine. We have a variety of chocolate that Chris has sent us from Kohler Chocolate, and we need to figure out which ones we want to pair with which wines. Can you join us? And I said, let me think about it. Okay. And then I mentioned to Rich, I said, I've got to be at the winery because I have to do a wine and chocolate tasting. He said, well, I'm coming. So Rich was there too. So we all participated, and we all, I think, were in agreement with the chocolate that we picked that we felt best complemented the wine, and the wine that best complemented your chocolate. So it was truly one of the more fun exercises that we practiced this year. Liam, I know we've got a couple more wines to go through and we don't have a lot of time, but we have a lot of guests out there that do have the RHF Cabernet, the 2017 vintage, and the Zinfandel Port, which to me, that's automatically where my brain goes when I think of wine and chocolate pairing. I think of Cabernet and Port.
That's great, Leslie. And yes, these are tried and true pioneers of great wine and chocolate pairing. What we wanted to do was highlight just how creative you could be in choosing those wines to get off that well-traveled path and explore more variety. And I think we discovered that with the Zinfandel and the Brut Rosé. But of course, when it comes to more time-honored pairings of wine and chocolate, Cabernet Sauvignon and Port are wonderful, wonderful partners on the plate. Our Port wine is a special wine for us, something we don't make very much of. Port wine is, of course, a mix of red wine that's partially fermented, so not fully fermented, with the addition of a neutral grape spirit, what is commonly called brandy. Brandy is distilled wine in its essence that's been barrel aged to give it that color. But the spirit of brandy is as a grape spirit. So introducing grape spirit to partially fermented wine amplifies the alcohol and amplifies some of that fruit note and gives it a little bit more intensity. We recently, Marissa and I have been recently exploring some really fun off the beaten path pairings for Port. And you can check out the blog on Frank Family Vineyards to see 4 really exciting ways to bring Port to the table. But Port and chocolate for me makes sense because the sweetness from the plate neutralizes some of the sweetness in the glass. When you're enjoying a sweeter wine, like Port is, by itself, sweetness is a component, almost like a flavor. And it can be a domineering flavor if you're not accustomed to having sweetness on the palate. The sweetness of Port can pull our focus away from the array of incredible chocolate and red and black fruit notes. But when sweetness already exists on the palate, the sweetness of Port can be mellowed out. In essence, when that real estate is occupied, the sweetness from Port doesn't take up as much space. So in our Port pairing, we're looking at some of the sweeter kinds of chocolates, the beautiful caramel chocolate heart, the matcha yuzu, which is like a tea powder with white chocolate and gel in there. And then also, there was one other chocolate that I'm forgetting that goes with that. Oh yeah, the passion fruit flavor, such a great flavor, but again, leaning into milk chocolate and the sweetness of the passion fruit. So if you're doing these pairings at home with the Port, let the sweetness that comes from the chocolate neutralize and mediate and balance some of the sweetness in the Port wine, and then watch how that allows Port's varied flavors to have a bit more room to come through and make their presence felt. And then lastly, guys, of course, the Cabernet Sauvignon from Frank Family Vineyards, RHF, such a well-balanced Cabernet. Now, with Cabernet Sauvignon, you're taking that concept of tannins that we found in the Zinfandel and then just increasing its presence. A little more firm, a little more tense, a little drier. Let's talk a little bit about how tannins can clash, Chris, because that's something that I'm sure as a chef, both in the chocolate arts and in savories, you're aware of.
Yes, we don't want two things battling each other in our mouth, especially. And now that fermentation, we're taking these two products and we could have some issues there. What I like about these is, there's, once again, that H word, the harmony. There's enough balance in the base of the chocolate and then the little bit of cream to help mellow out those tannins in the ganache. So if you're eating a 70% piece of chocolate or you're eating a 70% ganache, the fat and the cream is going to mellow out that chocolate a little bit, quite a bit. Mm-hmm. In cooking, put a little butter in before that sauce, before you put it on the plate. That's going to mellow out that veal reduction or that red wine reduction. So that little bit of cream that's in here helps the tannin from the chocolate side relax just a little bit. So there is no button heads inside there. Great.
And of course, RHF, really our flagship Cabernets here, a blend of fruit from the Winston Hill Vineyard where we are right now, plus from our Valley Floor Benjamin vineyard kind of almost behaves in the same way Chris was talking about. How do you find balance within a glass of wine? With food, we understand we can balance a dish. We can add a little cream, we can add a little fat, we can add a little oil, we can add a little acidity, if that's what we need to create balance. So how do you balance a bottle of Cabernet? With RHF, what you're getting is this wonderful marriage between those more concentrated, tannic, firmer, higher elevation Winston Hill grapes, offset by a more generous, slightly lusher Valley Floor grape from the Benjamin Vineyard. So this Cabernet Sauvignon is a wine about balance. And in that balance, what you have, and why I love the RHF so much, is because in that balance, you have a Cabernet that's both immensely enjoyable in its youthful place, but also layered and complex in its flavor profile today, tomorrow, and then also in 8 to 10 years as it matures. A great wine that transforms needs to be in its youthful state, possessing of those transformative components, right? It doesn't matter how long you age some wines. If it wasn't there in the beginning, it'll never show up there later. So the blend of Valley Floor fruit from the Benjamin Vineyard and Winston Hill fruit in the RHF really makes this both a knockout wine today, but then also for its potential in the cellar. We've paired this wine with the dark chocolate, a dense, rich 72% dark that's going to be really rich and complementary. Now, that intensity of dark chocolate flavor needs an intense partner. Otherwise, that partner will get lost. And I think RHF can bring that. We've also paired this, and this goes to one of the questions that was asked earlier. Tell us a little bit about that wonderful whiskey dark chocolate that we have in our Cabernet box, Chris.
The whiskey dark chocolate, I keep on saying one of my favorites, but I love them all. The whiskey dark chocolate, it's made from a whiskey here in the area. Hanson Distillery, they did a whiskey run for Father's Day last year, and they kept it going. And it's a local whiskey. What's neat about it is, the dark chocolate and the whiskey together, the vanilla, the background, the barrels they were stored in, those flavors really come through here. What's cool is the long lingering flavor of alcohol on this one. And then the marriage of the wine that follows through. I'm going to reverse just a little bit back. I wanted to talk about the port just a second. It's a very stereotypical thing. Most people are like dark chocolate and port. We went with a white chocolate base with a yuzu. We went with a passion milk chocolate, which is a yellow acidic fruit, and we went with a caramel. And I think, we always can learn something. And I was like, these are really, really neat pairings. They're fun pairings. They're not just like dark chocolate port, let's call it a night, let's go to bed now. No, you can mix it with other things besides just a dark chocolate. And that big fruit in the port, you can't go wrong. But back to the whiskey, I'm jumping around a little bit here. Take a bite, enjoy it. It's another balance of a cream that's based with a 70% chocolate and then a whiskey. Once you bite this one, smell the inside and just let it sit on your palate for a second. Enjoy this.
So many of those whiskey notes, those notes that give whiskey its flavor, come from that extended aging process. So look for similarities between the whiskey oak notes and the oak notes in a wine like RHF, which spends about 22 months in that mix of half new and half once filled French oak barrels. The cinnamon, the spice, the almost caramel note, all coming from that good oak aging.
Liam, we're getting so many comments. I'm having a hard time keeping up with them all, but I just want to read a couple of them for you and for Chris. Jeff Ronette and Kayla Shea say, thank you, Frank Family and Kohler Chocolates from Shea's in Austin, Texas. This was awesome. Nancy Walsh says, this is such an amazing event. Love the wines, of course, and love the chocolates. We'll be ordering more of both, so thank you so much. Lee Zimmerman says, fun and educational. Many more comments. So I think people are really enjoying this. But before we lose anybody out there, because we don't want that to happen, we want to ask one more trivia question and give one more person in our audience today an opportunity to win a $100 gift card for Frank Family Vineyards and a 16-piece box of Kohler chocolate. You don't want to miss that. The question is, and we'll take what? Marissa, the fifth person who correctly answers the question in the chat section. The question is this, the fifth person. The red wine dark chocolate Grenache is made with our Charles Valley Zinfandel. How many months is the Childs Valley Zinfandel aged in French oak? Oh boy. Oh my gosh. 1, 2, 3, wait, correctly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's Renee Hunt. Correct, right? She's the fifth person. Do we say the fifth person?
Yeah.
Yeah. Correctly. So 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, wait. 1. Did I screw that up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's Linda Baumhefner, but I already said Renee. Where's Renee's name? Wait.
Right here.
I already said Renee, so you both win. We had 2 winners for trivia question number 3. Hey, Chris, we need another box of 16-piece chocolate. I can't read somebody's name and then say, oh, wait, you didn't win. It was a joke.
No,
I've done that before.
Sorry about that.
that's a Steve Harvey move.
I know. I would not do that. I would not do that. So we had 2 winners for the same question. Okay, we like to give away stuff at Frank Family. And sorry, Chris, we like to give away your chocolate, too. So, but I think, we sent out some pairing tips. And I think it's important to remember pairing tips, your takeaway for today. Both chocolate and wine have intense flavors, so look for balance in the partnership. Dark or bitter chocolates clash with high tannin wines, so pair with big but softer reds. The weight and richness of chocolate can create harmony with red wine's acidity. But most importantly, like everything in life, have fun, right? Have fun. Rich, you love to have fun. Of course, it wouldn't be a virtual event if Rich Frank didn't make an appearance.
I just wanted to, it was mentioned, I was supposed to sit in the back and not be on today. But what you've been looking at here is a picture, an overshot from a drone of Winston Hill that we're on. So these are our Cabernet vineyards and the Sangiovese up here. And what this does, because you talked about whiskey, this really simply shows you the rest of what's hidden behind there with my TV. So you get an idea of what the barn is like. I try to cover it up sometimes, but I do love the whiskeys, the bourbons in particular with the chocolates. And thank you for this. This has been
Absolutely.
a fantastic day.
Thanks for letting me be your guest.
Liam, thank you. Leslie, been fun.
It's been fantastic. For all of our trivia winners out there today, Marissa McCann will be in touch with you. We have your email address. We know who you are. We know where to find you. Don't think we don't. Okay, we know. We'll find you. We will track you down. You will get your gifts. And I just want to thank everyone who joined us today. We are so appreciative of your support of Frank Family Vineyards. I will say that our tasting room is open for outdoor tastings. We're hoping to have some indoor tastings in the not too distant future, but the weather is beautiful in Napa Valley. If you feel safe enough and maybe you've been fortunate enough to get a vaccine and you can jump on a plane and you can come visit Napa, I would encourage you to do so because it's spectacular here. It is mustard season in Napa. My goodness, you drive down Napa Valley on 29 or Silverado Trail and it is beyond picturesque. It's just truly spectacular. And the wineries are open for business. We look forward to seeing you. If you can't get out to see us, you know where to reach us. Call Liam. Liam's there. Liam will take care of you, whatever your wine needs are. You need chocolate, go to Chris Kohler's website. Chris, tell me your website.
KohlerChocolates.com.
KohlerChocolates.com. Kohler with a K. KohlerChocolates.com if you want more of these fantastic chocolates to go with your Frank Family wine. We have some other great virtual events planned for you this month. So go to our website, go to the events section of our website, and we will list them there. But if you're on our email list, and I'm pretty sure that everybody joining us today is on our email list, you're going to find out about it anyway, right in your own inbox. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your taking the time on a Saturday and your support of Frank Family. Cheers to everyone, and let's do a shot for everyone there. Cheers.
Cheers everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.